To do our best to take into account the different styles that are available. One of the things we're also going to try and do is have a pre-recorded session that can be played for people. It's going to have spots where you can pause the presentation and be able to engage that way with the worksheets and such. So there are a number of interactive options in this workshop. And so please use whatever you can in your allotted presentation time. Some of these presentations, I think, are typically going to be in that hour range. Some might be 45 minutes or half an hour, or some might be more. But adapt the slides and time in accordance with whatever your needs are. You may not get to all the worksheets or the exercises, and that's completely okay, because you can either distribute some of these to your trainees as they walk out. You can and again, they can access the material on the website. If you are doing it in person and there's like a swag draw, for example, be sure to get your participant's name in a jar for a draw. But you want to have a presentation machine, a computer or a screen of some sort. Remember to have those like tent cards. Obviously, you want to have this PowerPoint and the worksheets, and those can be delivered to you. It's on the Google Drive. You want to have pens for people for exercises, the workshop evaluation, maybe some markers and a flip chart, things of that nature. So this presentation is the art of listening, and I am the current facilitator. We also have Sarah Alstrom and Tara Erickson. And for those that don't know, my name is Don Shapiro. So thank you very much for joining us today to celebrate CR Day, Conflict Resolution Day, and to talk about how we can increase our confidence in communication. The information that will be presented today is a collaboration between the Learning Seed and the Alberta Conflict Resolution Day Planning Committee. So before we get started, we want to talk briefly about Conflict Resolution Day and how it brings awareness to the field of conflict resolution. So Conflict Resolution Day is actually part of an international celebration. It's held annually on the third Thursday in October. And the information that we're presenting here was prepared by the Alberta Conflict Resolution Day Committee with the Learning Seed. So this planning committee was actually formed in 2007 with representatives from departments of the government of Alberta, local not-for-profit, community associations, and volunteers. We're very pleased to say that this presentation is going to be offered actually across Canada. I know there's a presentation also occurring in Ontario, but in several locations throughout Alberta and several communities. So last year we had quite a few participants, and this year we're looking to have even more. This year we're celebrating the 13th anniversary of Conflict Resolution Day, and you can check us out online at conflictresolutionday.ca for the online scheduled week-long activities that we have planned. So in terms of this session, this is the art of listening. This was originally developed and offered as a CRD, Conflict Resolution Day workshop back in 2013. So the Learning Seed produces award-winning educational media for educators to use in classroom, online, or broadcast. And their programs have appeared in most school districts across the US, Canada, Australia, Asia, Europe for over the past 4 to 5 years. What we're going to be discussing are the 7 laws of better listening, listening for feelings. We're going to do a quick little recap and then obviously have time for Q&A. The way this webinar is structured, you guys came in and the video was already turned off and the microphones were already muted. If you don't do it through a webinar, then it's a little bit different. So what we're going to ask is we're going to, if this was just done as a regular Zoom call, we would just at this point please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. It's found in, we just directed, it's just found on the bottom left. And if it's got the red stripe through it, you know it's on mute. For the purpose of us today, we're going to ask you guys to use the Q&A function for questions. So at the bottom, there's sort of two chat boxes where it's got the chat bubble. One is a single and one is double. The double one is the Q&A button. So please click on that for any questions that you guys may have. And we're going to do our very, very best to answer as many as we possibly can. If it's a smaller room, it's usually kind of really neat how you can arrange some of it. You can put people into separate, rooms. You can, if you only have, let's say, 5 or 6 people attending, having the video and having a little bit more of a Q&A session as you go through. It really depends on your presentation style. So have a little bit of fun with that. One of the things, everybody has a different perspective and everybody has certain wisdom that they can attribute to it. So making it as interactive as humanly possible helps within the guidelines of your presentation style. But always be sure to pause and be able to answer any questions, ask questions of the audience, share experiences. And as with everything, we know that Zoom and technology sometimes fails us. So if, for example, my internet becomes very, very unstable and this shuts down on me, then what I'm going to do is just reboot and then I'll jump back on. I can call back in, so please nobody panic. I'll find a way to get back on even if I have to use my phone to dial back in. We should have backup numbers, everything ready for you. You should have all the documents on your hard drive as well, the presentation and the worksheets and the such. So before we actually get started into the presentation and getting into it, were there any questions up to this point? I'm going to take that as a no. So let's continue. All right. So what communication skill could be more basic than listening? One of the things that we were talking about when we did the initial sort of run through of this was there's a whole lot of different forms of communication, isn't there? There's, when you say communication, what are the aspects, right? You have talking, you have listening, you have verbal cues, nonverbal cues, you have tone. There's a bunch of different things. What we're focusing on today is just the listening aspect, because we actually spend more time listening than almost every other activity except for breathing. Yet we listen at only a fraction of our potential. And one of the reasons is we really believe that we're just exceptional listeners. So we seldom make that effort to improve. So this program, The Art of Listening, teaches practical techniques to use immediately. It presents listening as a skill that you can learn, practice, and perfect. So this engaging program uses home and workplace situations to teach the 7 laws of good listening. It will illustrate the surprising value of attentive silence, the need to find something of interest in the person speaking, and the importance of staying out of the speaker's way. The technique suggests how and when to take notes, the role of body language in listening, and the need to listen between the words for feelings. So we explore how different people use different filtering systems to give the same message completely different meanings. Each law is key towards improved listening and communication. So what we're going to ask is that you just spend more time listening. You really want to let other people finish speaking. We got to resist that temptation to interrupt when we anticipate what the other person is going to say. Listen, even if you do know what they say, stay back and listen. Because poor listeners, they just talk too much. A bright, quick-thinking listener might want to cut the speaker short to just show their ability to understand quickly. But that anticipation is sometimes viewed more as arrogance or an interruption instead of intelligence or understanding, which is probably the intent. So to listen better, we have to listen more, and we give the other person quiet attention. So now there's some interactivity that you can always do. What tools do you use when you are really listening? And so a whole discussion can be based off that. So we're going to start that off as in the Q&A. I'd like to hear from anybody. What tools do you use when you are really listening? Do we have anything?
We have eye contact and nodding.
Okay.
Leaning forward.
Yeah, especially when you do this, right? It shows you really, yeah. Mm-hmm. Those little skills really help. And when we kind of start putting a package together, almost anybody can do it, including Ray Romano himself. Can I get feedback on law number 2? Find interest in the other person. So a basic barrier to listening is labeling a topic or person uninteresting. There's a great video that we also have here as part of the resources by The Big Bang Theory that does a really good job here of explaining this one. But if you believe something to be dull and uninteresting, I promise you it will be. The skilled listener knows there are no boring subjects, only bored people. So a poor listener rehearses a response instead of listening. A conversation between two non-listeners is like having 2 TV sets facing each other, playing at full blast. So a good listener finds a reason to listen instead of an excuse not to. So what do you do to stay focused on the speaker and find interest? This is a really good talking point. It can lead to several great conversations. And again, if you guys have any comments or like throughout this, if you want to engage in the conversation, it'll give you an idea of what it will really look like and feel like when you do the presentation yourself. And at any point, if there's a question that relates to a former slide, don't be shy to let me know, and maybe we can get a conversation going on some of those things. Law number 3, stay out of the way. A good listener keeps the communication path open. One way is to give feedback by asking open-ended questions. There's a really cool game called the open-ended question game. So if you have people in the same room, you just line up a few people and you're supposed to start off by asking an open-ended question, and the next person cannot and is not allowed to answer that question. They have to turn around to somebody else and ask a completely different open-ended question. And it's just one of those things that shows it's a very difficult exercise to do well, because if you get asked an open-ended question, your brain immediately wants to answer it because it opens up the field of communication. If somebody asks you something open-ended, it means that they really want to hear the answer. And so our brain right away attaches to that. So this game, it shows how difficult not doing that can be. So giving advice is setting up a barrier instead of listening. People who ask advice, who give advice, they do mean well, but greater help often comes from an attentive ear. Don't fear silence. People often reveal what's more important after the pause. In negotiation, for example, one of the things that you learn is that when you put an offer down, you just let there be silence because you want them to be able to reflect on the question. So what are some other ways that we can stay out of the way? Like what nonverbal cues, nodding, eye contact, verbal cues, saying yes or tell me more, similar to what we were saying before. Law number 4, listen to what people mean between the lines. This is a really cool law, and as we did this, I think I probably spent more time on this law reflecting than I have on some of the others. But a message has both content, the words, for example, and the feelings. So listening involves paying attention to both, and that's how you get the total meaning. A good listener knows the meaning of a word is found in a dictionary, but the meaning of people is actually found in listening. So how can we derive the between the lines messages, right? So we can look for body language cues, mismatched messages, and what do you do if you feel that there are incongruities, right? So if you text a friend and you say, hey, would you like to have lunch? And they text you back, okay, you know lunch is on. But if you're standing right in front of them and you say, hey, would you like to have lunch? And they answer you like this, okay, well, you know something is up. So now you get an opportunity to ask questions. And asking questions is really integral. Law, before we get to law number 5, there is the traveling story. So the traveling story is a really, really neat exercise. And it does flow a little bit back to the initial exercise that we had, I believe, for law number 1, or like even before, where we were asking people to describe themselves. So what we're going to do is we read a story. Would you guys want me to read the story actually right now? Is that a yes, no?
Sure, Don, go ahead.
Yep, okay. So what we're going to do is you're not allowed to take any notes. I was actually going to post it, but then that kind of defeats the purpose. So I don't want you guys taking any notes, and I'm going to read you a story. And let's see what you guys remember. Millions of people all over the world like traveling. They travel to see other countries and continents, modern cities, and the ruins of ancient towns. They travel to enjoy picturesque places or to learn about other cultures. It's always interesting to discover new things and different ways of life, to meet different people, to try different food, to listen to different music. People who live in the countryside often like to go to the big city in order to visit museums and art galleries, things that they don't have at their hometown. They like to buy in elegant shops and to dine at exotic restaurants. People from the city often like a quiet holiday by the sea or in the mountains where they can sunbathe or walk. Many tourists love taking photographs of everything that interests them. The sights of a city, old churches and castles, views of mountains, lakes, valleys, plains, waterfalls, forests, different kinds of trees, flowers, and plants, animals, and birds. People travel by train, by plane, by ship or boat, and by car. All means of travel have their advantages and disadvantages, and people choose one according to their plans and preferences. The fastest way of traveling is traveling by plane. The most comfortable is traveling by ship, and the cheapest is traveling on foot. If we like traveling, we see and learn a lot of things that we can never see or learn at home. Though we may read about them in books and newspapers and see pictures of them on TV, the best way to study geography is to travel, and the best way to get to know and understand the people is to meet them in their own homes. So now we can, if you're in person, you can hand out the list of questions. We have about 15 questions now, and you can hand them out to the participants to answer, or you can ask the questions verbally. So the questions are, why do people travel? What do you see and learn while traveling? How do people from the countryside like to spend their holidays? How can people travel? And so forth. And so the point of this, and again, this document right here is part of the kit that you'll receive for this. But really test, what does this actually say? How accurate do you think the responses are going to be? And so then you ask the group if it would have been helpful to take notes throughout that story. And that goes into law number 5, which is take notes. So we think faster than we walk. Than we talk. This imbalance invites daydreams and distractions, but it also makes careful listening possible. It provides time to evaluate the message and time to take notes. Note-taking is not only for the classroom. It can be helpful during telephone conversations, talking to a doctor, designer, tax advisor, lawyer, insurance agent, whatever it may be. If people comment on your note-taking, all you have to do is explain that what they say is important to you, and taking notes helps avoid misunderstanding. A formal outline style is not required. You can totally create your own personalized style, your own shorthand, whatever it is. And it depends what level of depth you really want. But in order to gain an understanding, it is a really useful tool, especially when you're trying to recall a conversation. So do you guys think that had you taken notes during the traveling story, you would have had a better understanding? I think that the answer for most of us would probably be yes. At this point, are there any questions, guys?
There's nothing in the Q&A, Don. Carry on.
Perfect. We're humming along. Law number 6 is assuming the proper stance. Body position can influence feelings, okay? So taking a posture that shows a lack of interest, your arms are folded, you're slouched back, you're not making eye contact, all these can create or amplify feelings of boredom. Assuming the stance of an attentive listener can actually improve listening. The eye level of two people sends a non-verbal message. Two people with eyes at the same level send a message of equality. If one is much higher, the message is superiority. The person higher up literally looks down on the other. It reminds us of when we were little kids and the whole world loomed above us. And the lower person might feel looked down upon and is forced to look up to the other. These different dynamics change the way we emote during a conversation, or how we feel, or how vulnerable we feel we can be. So how you sit and how you what stance you take becomes a very, very important process. This one is tricky. You gotta be aware of your filters. Now, your filters can be a variety of different things, but at the end of the day, we all have built-in ear lids to filter out what we don't want to hear. People have different filters based on their culture, their upbringing, even their gender. For example, men and women often have different kinds of filters, and that causes listening problems. If you become aware of your own filters, even without changing them, you will improve your listening. Just that awareness, that being able to label what the issue might be, helps you overcome it. Research finds that in general, women are like more details in conversation, and men tune out the detail and sometimes find this attention to detail somewhat irritating. Women are more likely to value communication and its resulting intimacy of its own sake, while men see communication as information. Many women claim men have a bottom line filter in which only the results or the solution actually matter. So we all have different filters when we consider our assumptions and perceptions. The same principle applies to our hearing. We hear things selectively, okay? So you have a big content ear. This results in more being heard than what was said. A big relationship ear results in misinterpreting what is being said. A big self-disclosure ear results in overanalyzing what might be going on for someone else. A big appeal ear results in spending a large quantity of time trying to figure out what others need and trying to meet those needs. So what are some of the filters, assumptions, and perceptions that may influence the way you receive messages? What big ear do you use in different situations or with different people? Does your conversation change if you find out somebody is liberal or Tory, right? It might change some aspects of the conversation. Now, this video right here is fantastic, and it's a shame that it won't play straight, but I encourage each and every one of you to just Google up right after this YouTube video. It's not about the male, and it really does explore very, very well some of the filters and the different dynamics of masculine and feminine communication. So it's not unusual to find men saying to women, "Would you just get to the point?" Women are more likely to value communication and its resulting intimacy for its own sake, and men are more likely to see communication as information. Women often listen more to understand, men listen to solve problems. To men, conversations are sort of like jockeying for position. Is the other person trying to one-up me or put me down? To women, conversation is a negotiation to reach consensus or give support. Is the other person trying to get closer or pull away? To women, talking is often relaxing. To a man, talking is often a kind of display, a chance to compete or demonstrate skill or superiority. But attributing one communication pattern to one sex can also be problematic. This may create an opportunity for discussion on making general statements. So one way we could look at it is there's a masculine and a feminine approach to communication. If you guys are in person, one of the cool things you can do is you can divide the class by gender and discuss how males and females differ in their communication and listening habits. And then you guys can even deliver some quotes to spur that discussion. And so what we have here is the perceptual filters, right? So do we see communication as information? Are we listening to problem solve, to jockey for position, or to compete? Is it relaxing? Are we trying to negotiate to reach consensus or support? So these are really good talking points that we can use to move forward. So the next 6 slides are for in-person workshops, or it can even be done through virtual. If you have a lot of people, you can certainly use the breakout room option, which you can set a timer. If it's done through a webinar, you can set a timer, and then they have that time to engage in that activity, and it automatically filters people through into the break rooms. Or if you have a smaller number, you can have a couple of volunteers kind of go through this. But these are really cool activities. So what we're going to do, and each activity is basically similar in a certain sense. No questions are allowed in any of them. As we get on, the last couple do, but it's kind of neat how that's done. But conversation should be as normal as possible within the limitations. So for slide number 1, you can only begin each sentence with the word it. For example, it's a nice day. So this group activity is designed to increase awareness of one's listening ability and the effects of speech patterns on communications and feelings. So it's divided into rounds, each consisting of a few minutes of conversation between partners. Conversation is restricted in each round to one particular speech pattern. After each round, partners discuss the effects of the restriction on their conversation. If there's a facilitator, they ask everyone to select a partner for face-to-face conversation. It all really depends on your structure. But you allow a few minutes for each round of conversation and about 5 minutes to discuss the conversation afterwards. So in it, externalizes the subject and places the speaker in some vague, like out there land. It's time to stop means I want you to stop. But the it is more comfortable than the I. It language tends to alienate and decrease the chance for real connection, right? And that's hopefully the lesson learned throughout this exercise. And that's why you also want to give it like a couple of minutes, so let people kind of get used to it, and they're going to struggle with it initially. For the next one, we begin each sentence with you. So you have a nice day. And obviously the other person can't simply just repeat what they said. The next conversation after that begins with we. We diffuses experience, right? Since we is really just an abstraction. We should cut the next class really means I want to cut the next class, but I don't really want to do it alone. So we can create unity for sure, but it can also provide the illusion of unity where none exists, and that's not authentic. And so then again, we can really lose real connection that way. Again, you want to have these conversations try to be as normal as possible, and you want to have that time afterwards, about 5 minutes, for your participants to really start engaging in that conversation and really feel that difference. Now we want to start with each sentence beginning with the word I. We don't use I think. No questions are allowed, and you'll start seeing that this is a much different approach to the conversation. And hopefully by this point, you start seeing people much more engaged in one and the other. As they're talking about themselves and they're making it more personal, it does change the dynamic quite a bit. So it's something that's really neat to see that shift. Now, this is round 5. This is part 1 of the last round. So we want we want to split it up that one person asks questions and one person answers questions. But each question has to start with the word why, and each answer has to start with the word because. So the why because pattern rarely leads to any productive communication. Anybody with a 2-year-old knows that the endless why questions keep conversations going, but do they really lead us anywhere? So asking why also often sparks some pretty good heated debate, even when scientists now realize that if you describe the what and how in as much detail, the why typically already is solved. And part 2 of this round is and then you also want to be able to switch. So one person does the why questions and another person answers because, and then you want to switch, give that person the opportunity to do the why and the because. And this is the same with the how or what, right? We want to stay away from questions like how come, again, there's really no restrictions here other than that. And we really want to understand what the effects are on people when we start asking the how or what type of questions. Again, you always want to have that that opportunity to discuss afterwards. And for those who are asking, who might be asking, why is how come forbidden? Well, because it really just is a different form of why, right? So we're trying to expand the conversation. Then we move on to another exercise of paraphrasing and summarizing. But before we get to this, are there any questions from anybody? No, looks like we're good. All right. So paraphrasing and summarizing. The purpose of paraphrasing and summarizing is to demonstrate understanding. Paraphrasing is the rewording of something written or spoken by somebody else. That's all it is. It's used to check your understanding of what has been said. Now, summarizing is a little bit different. It's used to collect and restate the main points of what has been said or written, showing that you have heard or read, well, like of whatever it was that you may have heard or read. It is a shortened version of main ideas that the speaker shared, okay? So we also have the a virtual option and an in-person option for this. But this is one of the oldest yet most effective exercises known to illustrate that listening is an active process. So what you want to do is you want to pick a topic of some interest to the class members, whether it be the validity of the death penalty, the abortion debate, or the recent debate that we got to see over the weekend, which was interesting to say the least. So one person in each group is the referee. The responsibility of the referee is to time the 3 minutes. So the other group members should carry on a 3-minute discussion or conversation in which there is listening. The conversation can be on any topic the group wishes, okay? There's one ground rule during this discussion. Before you can state your opinion, you must summarize what the last speaker said. The summary must be in your own words, so it's like a content echo, not a word-for-word echo, and demonstrate to the speaker that you did indeed understand. Only when the previous speaker agrees that you have summarized his or her statement correctly can you then proceed. If not, further explanation is needed until a summary is accepted. So, for example, we have a situation. Let's say we decide school is a situation. And we say, why do we have to study this stupid stuff, right? So now we can start listening for feelings in this exercise, right? If I say that differently, why do we have to study this stupid stuff? It means something different than why we have to study the stupid stuff. Maybe I have a problem with the content. Maybe I'm lazy and I don't want to study. And there's a lot of different feelings depending on which word I emphasize. So this is actually in, as part of your package of materials, this is the Listening for Feelings worksheet. So in this activity, we're exploring the importance of listening for the feeling behind words. When you listen for feelings, you show that you've been really listening and not just hearing. When you reflect that speaker's feelings, you are showing that you genuinely understand the feelings or messages they are trying to share. It creates an environment that allows the speaker to go deeper and sometimes even to come to new realizations. So, and again, when we review the statements, depending on how you say it in your mind, it can mean something completely different. This is one of the cool things. So if you add the listening for feelings and the paraphrasing, and you combine the two of them, well, that's simply empathy, right? It's being able to understand what they're saying and that there's an emotion that you recognize attached to them. That's all it takes. This is a fun activity for sure. Just because I love Everybody Loves Raymond, I'm going to play this video anyway. Hopefully it's going to run smoother. I love that video. So what we're left with is the Art of Listening 7-day challenge. The 7-day challenges are always my favorite. So what you want to do is you want to apply one of the laws that we discussed every single day. You want to take that time to at least apply one of the laws. So I believe there's a handout worksheet at the end of the workshop for at-home practice as well. So what you want to do is on day one, try and find that time and spend more time listening. Day two, find interest in the other person. Stay out of the way. Listen to what people mean between the lines. Take notes. This one is a real challenge because it seems so like an odd practice. But when you do it and you explain why you're doing it, it's amazing how the conversation turns. It's a really cool thing. Assume the proper stance and be aware of your filters. And again, it's not about changing your filters. As long as you're aware of them, that's when change really starts to happen. So for the in-person workshops, at the beginning of this, we asked, we would have told you, or we mentioned that you're going to ask your participants, to describe themselves and what they do for their free time, a certain amount of questions. So if you listen well, you should be able to recall many of the points. So what you want to do is you want to test those skills now. So you refer to the notes that you took, just to make sure that you're correct. And ask someone to start by recalling something that they remember any of the other participants stating. So you check the notes to make sure that they recalled it correctly, and then repeat that with as many participants as time allows. So you want to have a few minutes for this activity, and then you discuss. What do you notice? Is it difficult or is it easy to recall information, especially now that a significant amount of time may have passed? What does this say about the importance of actively listening? So it's all these things that really cement the importance of the 7 laws. Now is a really good opportunity for self-reflection. Here we can take some time to consider what the biggest challenges and what your personal biggest challenges are in listening. Make some short and long-term goals, and then really focus on a way to implement them. If you can implement the art of listening into your daily, the Big Bang Theory one we can add to the Google Drive, for example. And there's one here called Inside Out. Do you guys remember that show, Inside Out, the Disney Pixar movie? It's a really cool clip from there. And that's it. That's the presentation. Obviously, we ran through it fairly quickly without the exercises, but just to give you guys an idea, that portion, without really going through any of the exercises, that was about 50 minutes, 50. of time. So what I'm hoping for now, and I guess what we're hoping for as a panel, is to hear your questions. If you guys want to try out some of the exercises, however you guys kind of want to run through it, I think that is the goal for today based on my understanding. So ta-da.
Thank you, Don. The first comment to come in here was that the content was good, and the participant is looking forward to applying the exercises in the workshop setting, and fun delivery.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, this is really great material, guys. Like, because at the end of the day, especially if you can present it from, reminiscing about times, because, there was definitely a pre-ADR world done that was very, very bad at listening. I mean, if you talk to almost anybody now, I'm pretty bad, but, it's vastly improved from before, right? The summarizing, the paraphrasing, and I can just, in my own mind, recall those moments where I effectively use those techniques and how it just moves the conversation forward in such a productive, healthy, and authentic way. It's pretty cool, especially when you get that vulnerability.
Okay, Don, we have a request to go back to slide 29 and help a virtual facilitator understand the instructions. I can add them to the PowerPoint and upload it again to the website. However, when you spoke, you made a reference to a Listening for Feelings worksheet. And I'm having trouble, that was from Cindy, but I'm having trouble locating that worksheet to send out to everybody right now. So I will have to look for it on my end.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we'll definitely deliver that worksheet to you. So again, so the point of this one, and again, there doesn't even need to be a worksheet on this. We all agree in this room to discuss a topic, right? And it could be anything. We could just, it could be a topic out of a hat. You could ask them at the beginning of the presentation, what are some interesting topics or headlines that are out there right now? And then we just kind of fold them up and put them in a hat just to make the process easier. And then we just kind of pull one topic out. And the point of this is you're going to have a conversation. So you have each conversation is going to have 3 people in it. The 2 people conversing and a referee. Now, if you are able to do a webinar with breakout rooms, then you can just set the timer for those rooms, 3 minutes, and it automatically places 2 people in each room at a time. You can have it even be even bigger groups, like 6, but it doesn't really matter. The point is that one person is speaking at a time about that topic. When that person finishes speaking, the other person, using all the active listening and the art of listening and all the laws that we've talked about up to this point, before they're allowed to say their opinion, they have to paraphrase or summarize what the previous person said. Only when that speaker, the initial speaker, agrees that they understood, are they now allowed to state their opinion. Did that answer the question?
Did that answer the question, Cindy? Unsure, Don.
Yeah, like, and the thing is with this exercise, and for some of us that have done this, we forget that this is really hard for people. This is really, really difficult for most people. And it really clearly shows and defines and illustrates the difficulty of good listening. It also teaches that good listening requires a lot of concentration and a lot of effort. If anybody here has done a mediation, a really good solid one, that you walk out of there as the mediator and you're like, it's exhausting. right? It takes a lot of effort to be a good listener all the time. So just keep that in mind, and those types of exercises really show that. Are there any other questions?
Just a comment here. This is Allie speaking. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to, hi, Don. I just wanted to say that for me, I'm going to be facilitating this for my workplace, and it'll be during work hours. And so I need to be really careful that I'm staying within the 1 hour that I've booked. And so just a comment is, for me, I'll be looking at the presentation and I'll be saying, okay, what can I fit in my hour? And then I'll be probably chopping some stuff so that I can really spend some good quality time on some of the pieces that resonate for me and really tailor it to the group that I'm facilitating with. So I would just encourage other folks who are looking at the presentation to feel free to make it your own and pick the things that resonate for you so that you can make the presentation fit within your window and be exercises that resonate with you and that you're excited about, because that really comes out in the skills building when the facilitator is excited about the content.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Allie. That's a really good point, Allie, because what you want to have is don't, we went through every single slide that we have to offer. It certainly does not mean that you have to. When you go through this, find your presentation style. Are you more interactive, less interactive, more instructive sort of thing? Find what works for you and really read the crowd, right? What does the crowd want? Do they want something that's more interactive, or they want something less so? If you're able to sort of amend on the fly, that's fantastic. But kind of stick to that, a structure that you have in your mind to a certain extent. Know which slides you're more than willing to disregard. You can delete them from your own deck for sure, because we have that full capability here. Because, to Allie's point, she's got an hour. Some people might even have less, 45 minutes or half an hour, as we said. So that's a really good point. Thanks, Allie.
Yeah, and Don, I wonder if you wouldn't, if you're ready to talk about it, if you wouldn't mind talking for a couple seconds about the workshop that you're planning to facilitate and maybe record for folks to watch. I actually have my back pocket as something that I'm going to refer to folks if actually my workshop has already, like the attendance is full, but I'm telling people, if you can't make mine, there's a recorded one, go check that one out.
So we're actually still looking for volunteers for that. So thank you for bringing that up, Allie. What we're hoping to do is try and facilitate the full presentation as like a video or even a series of videos, right? Maybe we do one for each module. But the presentation in and of itself, we're going to have moments where we have 6 people on the screen, just like a regular Zoom call where you could see everybody. It's going to be a little bit more orchestrated, but we're going to go through it and we're going to engage in the questions, and then we're going to run through the modules together on that. But it'll also give you the opportunity to do it at home. So let's say before we do an exercise, I'll look at the camera and I'll say, okay, this is your opportunity for those who are viewing this later to press pause. Try this yourself. Pull out this worksheet available at this link. You can download the full kit here, for example, and try this out on your own. And just press pause now as you work through that sheet. And then we continue on, and then you just press play and you see the next part. And then we're going to move through as many or all the modules. And then again, you can pick and choose which ones you wish to see or even forward to the people that might not have been able to attend yours. Did that explain that?
Yeah, that was great. And what's exciting about that is if I take a look at this content and I say, you know what, I'm only going to have time to go through the first, 5 steps of active listening, but I can tell my attendees, if you want the other 2 steps, go to this recorded version and you can get the full experience. You can also share it with your family member who maybe really needs to hear it or would really be interested in hearing it, and they can look at it at their own pace. That's a really cool spin that we get to do this year because everything's virtual. It's sort of like, let's make the most of this and help people work on active listening all year instead of just one day.
Yeah, and again, it's trying to find one of the benefits of COVID, right? You take the good, you take the bad, and there you have it. So yeah, we discussed that as a committee and thought that you never know, if there's really good feedback, maybe that's something that we decide to do ongoing. No matter what, after this, you definitely have to see that it's not about the male video. It's just my favorite thing. Oh, and again, if you are able or willing or desirous in any way to be a part of that video, for 6-10 people, it would be fantastic if you volunteered. And again, this could be the presentation, right? You can use the video and do the presentation from that perspective as well, if you so choose. So we're trying to provide as many options as possible.
Hi, Dawn, it's Tara here. Thank you everybody for coming tonight. And I just wanted to say, if there are no more questions or if anybody has any more feedback right now, it's a great time to put it forward. Otherwise, we're going to finish up in just a minute or two. Alternatively, you can email the info@conflictresolutionday.com and we can address your questions there as well.
I'm lucky that happened now.
Well, Don, your dogs have something to say.
Yeah. I'm sure they're upset that I don't listen to them enough.
Okay, there's nothing coming in for questions or comments. So I think, Dawn, if you're ready, you can wrap it up on your end as well. And again, people can connect with us through the website if needed.
Yeah, for sure. So you can connect to the website, the email. If you're interested in the video, you can also call me directly at 403-863-9700. Again, 403-863-9700 if you wish to be part of that video, and I certainly appreciate it. Thank you all very, very much. Bye-bye.